Hello and welcome to another episode of More Than a Business Live. I am your host, Mitch Case. I am also the co-founder of More Than a Meal, where we help organizations strengthen their most valued relationships by showing gratitude and appreciation one meal at a time. I started this a handful of episodes ago. I think we're on 18 maybe at this point, with the purpose of highlighting individuals that are working hard day in and day out, both inside organizations and even outside that are helping make impacts on other organizations on the work that they are doing to build a place that is desirable to go to work. Sometimes these individuals aren't recognized enough, and I want to make sure those individuals have this platform to be able to share what it is that they are doing, things that are working, things that didn't work, and ultimately what makes their organization more than a business. So if you are tuning in live, let us know where you're listening from. It does not tell me where you're listening from. So in the comments, go ahead and shoot in. If you're over at LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube, let us know where you're coming from a city perspective as well. It's always nice just to get that interaction to know where we're from. And with that, every single Thursday at 3 p.m. Central Time, we are bringing another amazing guest. And today's guest is nothing short of that as well. So I'm going to go ahead and get Dennis on the show here. Welcome. This is Dennis Kadel with Miller Group. So Dennis, give us a little quick high-level intro, who you are, what you do, and what it is specifically about that you do at Miller Group.
Thank you, Mitch. Again, my name is Dennis Kadel. I work for the Robert E. Miller Group in Kansas City. My title is Senior Vice President of Benefits. I think that just means I've hung around long enough to end up in the titles. But I really like to think of myself as a benefit advisor, trusted advisor, working with clients to design, implement, communicate employee benefit programs, which are a very valuable tool for employers to provide to employees to retain employees. And so I work in that environment. I'd also say that I'm an educator in this world of healthcare and employee benefits, with all the things that happen and changing and compliance. It's all about educating employees and employers and make sure they stay in the right place and they don't find themselves in a situation that they don't want to be in.
Yeah, and today's episode's unique in the sense because typically we're talking with owners or HR executives, and I know that's primarily who you're working with. So having your perspective on some of the initiatives that are out there are going to be really, really unique in the sense of the ways that our guests that have been on the show previously, as well as those that tune in, can maybe learn a little bit about ways that they can implement some of these different strategies. So I'm excited to kind of dive into that. Before I do that, I do want to go back and thank our sponsor, True Captive. You had mentioned health insurance. It reminded me to make sure that they get the recognition that they deserve. I'm going to pop them up here real quick. So True Captive, they believe in healthcare that is personal and insurance that isn't complicated. So if you do want to learn more about them, they have amazing ownership and team members. You can just go over to truecaptive.com to learn more about them. So with that, Dennis, I always like to start the show by jumping into more of an impact story. I think stories can really drive home the way that businesses and individuals can truly impact our community and outside of our community. So if you don't mind, maybe share a story about something that either you or Miller Group has specifically done that has either made an impact on a client or potentially even a team member of yours.
Yeah, I would like to think that we impact our employers and the members part of their benefit plans, certainly on a daily basis. But there are so many times that we've been able to help relieve pressure off an employee or an organization. I guess one of my, I say favorite stories, but it just shows that insurance isn't fair. It's not. Sometimes it's not fair. Is one of our at that point, one of our prospects called it. Literally, it was 5 o'clock in the evening, and they called and said, "Hey, we've got a 300% rate increase from our carrier. What do we do?" And this was a nonprofit. Not going into the details, but that's literally what an insurance company did to a nonprofit company here in Kansas City. And through myself and my whole team, we dug in and found a situation and spun it around and put them in a better position, much better than 300%. But this is this was an organization and is an organization that serves our city and serves those that are in need. And so being able to work for them and being able to put them in a better position um, is something that really, I think all our staff really enjoys doing, and really enables us to help manage the cost and the communication of all those things. So, and that's just one story. I mean, there are tons of those stories where we get involved in those things.
Yeah, and what's interesting about that, and as a business owner, like that freaks me out in future situations along those lines. But that truly can be the difference between somebody getting to stay or somebody needing to leave because they just financially cannot afford that, and especially coming from a nonprofit where they're probably not making large sums of money. They're being strategic with every single penny that is being served, and the fact that you guys can come in and assess that situation and pull that off quickly, especially at 5 p.m. where we know all of us are ready to hang it up and move on.
Yeah, well, it took a few weeks. It was just I got the call at
Agreed.
5.
I understand it didn't happen just on that phone call, but the idea that was a call of desperation
Yes,
that they
it was.
made, and you're able to follow through with that. Before we move on to the next phase of this, Andrew, appreciate you tuning in over in beautiful Overland Park. And Dennis, you might have a fan here. Sierra over at Kids TLC is saying that she absolutely loves you and the Miller Group. So much appreciated, Sierra, for tuning in and hearing a little bit more about what does make Miller Group more than a business. And it's a really good transition for us right now as we kind of dive into that portion of the show, Dennis. This is the part where we want to learn more about what it is that Miller Group does. And maybe it's specific to you. I understand within each individual organization, some have the freedom to create their own book of business in a sense and how they go about that. But let's talk about what truly does make the Miller Group more than a business.
Well, and I love that question, and I think it goes back to Bob Miller, who formed the company 61 years ago. Miller is a family-owned company, and I think we all feel like we're part of the family. Very maternalistic company. In fact, I think we're one of maybe 3 or 2 still privately held family company insurance agencies in Kansas City.
Okay.
So we find ourselves being very special. We haven't been bought up by a global company or anything like that.
Yeah.
I think it's just so interesting how we are giving to the community, giving to each other. I mean, one example I love is many years ago we stopped giving to the United Way, but we started giving to the Miller Way. And
interesting. Yeah, tell me more about that.
And what we do as an organization is again, we support not only for-profit companies, and we certainly love them, but as you mentioned earlier, nonprofits have a unique situation. They're very budgetorial, they're very cost sensitive and stuff like that. And what the Miller Group does is allow all employees to pick as long as they're a client of ours, we can donate our own money to those nonprofits, and then Miller will match it 100%.
Wow.
And the really great part, and I got my email today, is that we go and give those checks out right before Thanksgiving. So we're going out, and all employees, if you want to go give one to Synergy, or you want to go give one to Lake Mary, or whatever your nonprofit, you can go hand deliver it to the CFO or whoever and just say, hey, we thank you, and here's a little bit of support. I think the number as of 2019, we've given over $1 million away to the nonprofit in our community through donations through our employees and
goodness. That is, substantial, especially coming towards the end of the year too, where maybe budgets haven't quite kept on track, and using a couple of the end of the year funds to come through can really make a huge difference. So I definitely appreciate that. You talked about it being a family environment. Ironically, I do know a couple of the Millers. I've had a few of them show up for basketball with me Friday morning. Shout out to Brad. Haven't seen him in a little while, but I also know he recently had some babies, 1 or 2 of them. So that's okay. I thought that was the case. So This is a shout out to Brad to come back out whenever he gets some rest. But maybe dive into the specifics, because it's one thing to say, hey, we're a family-owned business. It feels like a family, but it's another thing to like, what is it that truly makes it feel like you guys get together for like a potluck dinner every Sunday night as a family? Like, what does that kind of look like from that? And I'm obviously joking from that perspective, but like, maybe give us some ideas from that perspective.
I think, well, food is always brings you together, right? When we were all out for the pandemic and we were all working from home, it's kind of interesting how things get adopted. But to get everybody back in the office, we have lunch served every Monday for everybody. So it's been really nice to have everybody there and communicate and have fellowship and everything on a Monday, every Monday, and invite everybody together. But I think it's special that we, Bob, who started the organization, and then Matt and Sean, who took it over and guided us through growth to about 2 years ago. And then, now we have Amber Manning, a third generation leader.
That's incredible.
So, yeah, I mean, it's a good atmosphere, very caring. We have, which is kind of unusual for a company of our size. We have unlimited PTO, which means that, we certainly don't want people to abuse it, but if you need time off, you just take it, you make sure things get done. So we're given a lot of leeway to make sure that we can provide the best services to our clients. But we're also, it's important to take care of our family. So it's a nice balance.
Yeah, the idea around like unlimited PTO, and maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but from my understanding, people are almost like less likely to take time off.
Right.
From that perspective. And I know that's not the reason for giving that option, but sometimes you have to be reminded to be like, listen, you need to get out of here. I'm tired of seeing you. Go take some time off.
Right.
Because you can say that in a family. I have been around you too many days in a row. It's time to separate ways for a little bit. But I can definitely appreciate that. And just every time I sit down with one of those boys, it's Chris and Brad, I think, are the brothers, right? Two brothers.
They are brothers, yes.
Okay. Every time I get to sit down with them, I hear more
Andrew,
stories.
Andrew, who chimed in, is another brother. So.
Oh, is he really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. I need to get Andrew back in for some basketball. I think he's shown up once or twice. That goes back to our Toastmasters days when I originally met Andrew at Toastmasters back at Matt Ross Community Center. So long time ago, pre-COVID. Awesome. Yeah, I've just always known that Miller Group has been very family oriented, just through understanding what I hear from those two individuals. So I'm glad to hear that coming through on your end as well. Let's kind of transition into you specifically. I always kind of talk about this idea that not every single day is sunshine and rainbows, and we still have to show up to be able to serve the people that we're blessed to serve. So what continues to have you show up day in and day out and keep you motivated in the work that you're doing within Miller Group?
Well, I'm very blessed that I've been able to grow in an organization that, and you mentioned it earlier a little bit, that we build our own books of business. I personally seek out companies that are mid-size. I say that's 75 to 200. Those companies usually are they don't have the resources to really dig into how they can maximize their benefit programs. And so I rely heavily on education, just educating those members. As you said, owners, you usually talk to owners in HR. That's who I'm talking to every day, right? And ultimately, if you think about employee benefit plans, the 10,000-pound gorilla is the medical plan, right? I mean, it's the one eating up millions of dollars.
Yeah.
And so what brings me back day to day is the ability to affect change, to work with an employer who is maybe having some high cost claimants, having costs that are out of control, or even getting in there before they have those issues and educating them on, here's a better model. And I'll put a shout out to your sponsor. I mean, a captive program is something that we use a lot in my organization. And not to go into the weeds, but True Captive is certainly in a marketplace that helps employers control cost. So we use those tools. And really, if you think about it, go back and think of anybody that's gone to college or high school, whatever. Nobody ever teaches a person how to run a healthcare program, right? I mean, you also it's kind of handed to a CFO or somebody and said, here's your $4 million problem, solve it, and so
Yeah.
I really like being that person, that trusted advisor for those people to say, here's how it works, here are the opportunities. It is expensive. I'm not going to lie, it's expensive, but there are ways to tame it, right? And actually enhance benefits for employees if you do it right. So that's what brings me back. I love being able to, I guess, take something that quasi is broken, right? It's kind of broken, and fixing it and putting it in a better model so that over time it's going to perform better.
I mean, that aligns. Bringing up our sponsor again, True Captive, David Voorhees, the owner over there. I remember getting connected with him, and his whole reason for getting into the healthcare side was his frustrations with the healthcare side when he was on the other end of the table. And I just remember him saying, like, we were out golfing one day, and he's like, man, I've just, I've done well for myself, and now, like, I just want to go and help good people win. And he's doing that from the healthcare perspective, and I would just say a mentorship in general. But it just aligns well with kind of what you're talking about. Is this is a daunting, scary thing for any organization, where all of a sudden you get hit with a 300% increase, and you're trying to figure out, how in the world can I even handle this without letting go of people or just losing people because they can't afford it? That puts so much stress on that ownership, on the team, on the HR, just throughout. So it's hard to maintain a positive environment and culture when it's trickling from the top of all the stress that comes from that. Not getting into specific examples of like what you have done, but what have you seen from like some of the organizations from their culture perspective, with the way that you've come in and either helped from an education perspective, different initiatives that you've seen that have worked from there to help the rest of us that are on the other side of the table stressing out about this? Like, how can we utilize our partners in healthcare and benefits to really help strengthen all the relationships in our organization, but build and contain a company culture that we've worked hard to keep?
Yeah, I mean, those are great questions. I really believe that, organizations are all in different modes, right? I mean, some are in growth modes where this is not a concern, but once you get to an organization that is, and I got to believe that every organization is concerned about cost, but it's really about, once you build the model, I can build a model, but if people aren't willing to engage in that, it doesn't really help. So anybody listening to this, and you and thousands of people, we were never taught to buy healthcare, right? What do? We go see our doctor, a trusted advisor, right? But sometimes those doctors are misaligned. They're owned by a hospital. They're owned by somebody where they're going to self-direct you to a MRI that costs $3,000. Can I tap that employee on the shoulder and say, hey, you can go over here to diagnostic imaging, and it's only $800, right? So a lot of this that we've learned is not necessarily, it really relies on communication and developing tools that enable us to tap on employees' shoulder just to say, hey, you have choices.
So let's dive into that a little bit, if you're okay with that, because it is something. Like, my wife is a nurse. She's working at the hospital right now. Our son 6 months ago hurt his arm. We thought maybe he broke it. We took him to the ER. He had a X-ray. We just got the bill last week, and I said, what?
Right.
So help me understand, just from like the tools that you're talking about, or the resources and the education, like, how do you get ahead of somebody that's taking somebody to the ER versus maybe going to an urgent care just without the knowledge? We were in a certain circumstance where we had to go to the ER, but I'm kind of thinking, like, during the day, during these types of situations, how do we get ahead of that? So one, it helps control costs for the individual employee, but it also controls costs for the employer. Like, what are some of the tools and resources that you guys are utilizing, or education from that perspective?
Well, let me just say, when you have your third kid, you'll just put a Band-Aid on it, Okay, so
I have a third kid, and she wears a lot of Band-Aids.
no, I mean, obviously, if it's an emergency situation, there's no, there's no roadblocks. You do what you got to do.
Correct. Yep.
But where you can affect a lot of mid-level claims is, let's take a knee replacement, right? I mean, a very, very, very common procedure today, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you can educate an employer, or at least tap them on the shoulder, and we do that through technology now.
Okay.
So let me take you through a real quick claim, right? You go see a doctor says, after all the things, hey, you're eligible for a knee replacement, right? Well, you just don't get a knee replacement. It has to go to the insurance company. The insurance company has to say, yeah, that meets all the criteria. At that point is where we intersect the claim. And now we're communicating with an employee saying, hey, if you go here, which is a high quality, low cost facility, guess what? We won't charge you any deductible or nothing, right? Because that procedure now is $23,000 as opposed to $48,000 at the hospital, right?
Yeah.
So, and what speaks mostly to employees is their checkbook. Now, you got to make sure it's quality and everything like that. But we're being able now, I mean, that's where technology is now able to help us communicate with employees, do telemedicine, which is a huge thing now. That's a thing that came out of the pandemic, is being able to, kind of like what we're doing right now. You could be a physician right now talking to me about some issue that I have. You don't have to leave anywhere. It's very convenient for me. So
yeah,
those types of tools are what we're being able to use to help educate employees to make good decisions on their healthcare, which ultimately saves them money and then saves the organization money and drives up quality and satisfaction.
Do you find that employees are slow to adopt that technology?
Yeah.
As far as like,
Yeah.
it's weird, I'm just going to go to the doctor because that's what I've always done. And
Well, what I've learned over time, and again, is that it is slow. I mean, again, the hardest thing we have to break is, and not that I want to, doctors are doing everything they need to be doing, but
agreed. Yeah.
we need to understand that there are options out there when there are treatments, and
Fair.
and I think what it takes, and where we really get a lot of good responses, and you can understand this. All it takes is one employee to say, "Do you know what happened to me? This is what happened," and then it spreads like wildfire in a company. Right? It's like we often try to get employees during meetings to maybe stand up if they're willing to talk about, "Hey, I had this experience," and kind of give
interesting. Yeah.
Because again, it's like talking to your kids. They'll listen to another parent, but they won't listen to you, right?
That works for spouses as well. I'll tell you, is I don't know how many times I've taken medical advice from my wife, and then I hear it from somebody else. I'm like, "Did you know you could do this?" And she's like, "I've been telling you that for 10 years." Anyway, well, I like the idea. Like it almost kind of starts within like personal experience. How can you spread that throughout? Just because you trust probably more your colleagues than, not to take anything away from you, Dennis, but Dennis walking in and presenting this, I'm going to trust somebody else that I know personally versus the other person coming in the door. So that's a great, any organizations I think that are listening in on this, that just word of mouth within can really help utilize that and save both costs for employees and employers. So I hate to cut us off there, but we're nearing the end of the time. It's going fast. If anybody wanted to reach out to you because maybe something has resonated with them, maybe they got hit with a 300% increase and in the next hour and a half, what's the best way for them to get a hold of you to learn more or hear more about you?
Well, again, if they're here, I'm on LinkedIn. You can obviously, the Miller Group is a good way to get hold of me. So just send me an email, send me a message in LinkedIn, whatever. I'd love to. As I said, I'm an educator. I have a strange sickness about wanting to talk about this and the craziness of it. So if somebody just wants to, have an adult beverage and talk about the chronic issues of employee benefits, let's do it. So
I think you could probably get a pretty heavy crowd around that table. That's for sure. Which I'm waiting for somebody to solve the problem because it's too big for me there. But I do appreciate the work that you are doing, Dennis. If anybody does maybe have troubles trying to reach Dennis, you can always reach out to me as well, and I'd be happy to get you connected. Dennis, something that we do on this show every single week is just to show our gratitude and appreciation is offer a meal out to you to be able to send to someone that you think is deserving, whether going through challenging moments in life or celebratory moments in life. So would you mind maybe telling us a little bit about who that person is and why, feeling free to share as much or as little as you would like?
No, and when you first told me about this, it's kind of hard just to give it to one person, right?
Well, Dennis, I will let you know
I
we can always send more than one. I know somebody that can help you with that too.
I know. I appreciate that. I thought hard about this, and as I said, I deal with a lot of owners and HR people, and I'm going to offer mine up to the HR director at Jewish Community Center. It's an awesome organization. Mary Beth goes above and beyond, and I just like to recognize her, and I think she would well deserving of it. Those all HR people, believe me, are not valued enough, and all the stuff they have to put up with. So I select her as my participant. So.
Awesome. Well, what I will do is I'll connect with you offline here, and we'll make sure to get that info so that we can get that meal out and delivered to her at her convenience whenever she's ready for that. So, Dennis, I can't thank you enough for coming on the show. I think you brought a really unique perspective to this show and those that are watching, in the sense of, what do I do in this situation? How does this happen? And somebody that advises from that perspective is just a really good perspective. So I appreciate you making time. I know you're traveling and you're out in Colorado right now. So
Yep.
I don't know. I would imagine there's snow on the hills now. So maybe you can, I think everybody I know in Colorado calls it quits by like 3 o'clock out there to go hit the slopes.
That's what I hear. So no, it snowed here yesterday. So, but yeah.
Awesome. Well, greatly appreciate you coming on the show. We are going to be here every single week, every Thursday at 3 p.m. Central Time. Next week, we have Greg Offner with Global Performance Institute. He's got a book coming out called The Tip Jar. I forget the slogan behind that, but it's really interesting, and you guys should definitely tune in from that perspective to learn more about how he went from pretty much a karaoke at a bar individual to now helping out in the HR world, and how you can really create unique experiences for all of your team members. So, Dennis, you have any last words you want to share with our audience?
Hug your HR person carefully.
I like the disclaimer there. So definitely appreciate it. All right. Until next time, I just wish you guys a great week, and we will catch up with you at Thursday next week with our next guest.